Welcome to The Maintenance Mindset, an audio-video podcast brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network. I'm your host, Paul Rhodes, and over the more than 3 decades in the apartment industry, I've had roles that include being on-site, providing services as a vendor, creating and delivering multiple education programs, and active association work. This podcast is centered on the often overlooked role that our on-site maintenance workers play. You know, the men and women that respond in the middle of the night to the toilet call, or the after hours, it's really hot in my apartment request, or my favorite, my ring fell down the drain, get over here now. In other words, the often unsung heroes who are responsible for asset preservation and resident satisfaction. Working in multifamily maintenance provides interesting, sometimes amusing, and often fascinating stories and viewpoints. My encouragement to you is this: whatever you do it with a maintenance mindset. Let's talk about communication. This week when traveling and I went through the airport, I got there early. So I got the opportunity to do what I really enjoy, which is getting an extra large cup of coffee and go sit and watch. Now, in today's day and age, running through an airport, there are about 100,000 conversations happening. There are 200,000 things that are going on. And sometimes, if we stop and pay attention to what's going on around us, we can notice things that give us a new perspective on how you and I conduct ourselves. Now, as I was sitting down enjoying my coffee, a couple of young ladies sat down in the row behind me. Now, we'll call the young lady telling the story, her name's Janet. I'm just making that up. But Janet was complaining to her friend about a customer that came in yesterday. And this customer started yelling at Janet up and down in front of all the other customers in their, what she was describing, open office. And Janet raised her voice back to yell at the customer. Now, before we go any further, I would like to note that while I've learned in dealing with customers and coworkers and stakeholders and all of those people that we interact with, if someone is raising their voice at you, especially in anger, if you match their level, their anger, their energy, it doesn't help. Somebody once told me, you don't put out a fire with more fire directly. What do you use to put out a fire? Water. So, okay, that was the first observation I made. But Janet continued telling the story. And in this story, she yelled back at the customer that came in to see her. And apparently, this customer, the day before yesterday, had emailed Janet with an issue, emailed her directly. Janet forwarded the email to her boss, her supervisor, to her manager, to her whoever it was that could actually solve the problem that the customer was having. And that was it. In other words, the customer complained to Janet. Janet couldn't do anything with the complaint, couldn't solve the issue, so Janet forwarded the message to somebody who could. The problem is Janet didn't let the customer know that something happened. And the reason why the customer came in and yelled at Janet is because the customer could see that Janet saw the email, and yet, to the customer's mind, she was being ignored. So I think that's kind of takeaway number 2. You see, the second lesson in this case is about the fact that when somebody complains to someone who, in the customer's perception, can solve the problem, if it's ignored, that tells the customer they need to raise the volume, throw up a flag, paint it fluorescent, pink, orange, purple, get somebody's attention. So that's what the customer did. Janet, who did what she was supposed to do to directly solve the problem, did not complete the circle and acknowledge the customer's request to begin with, or even let the customer know what the next steps are going to be. So the customer, in my mind, was justifiably irritated. Now that got me thinking, does that happen on our communities? A couple of situations. If a resident puts in a work order, let us know that something is wrong. Do we tell that resident, I acknowledge your message? Maybe we do. That's really easy to do if they come in our office or over the phone where there is direct two-way communication. But what about with our continuing trend for having residents put in work orders by non-personal means? In other words, a resident portal. Have them text message, have them send an email. Do we have a system in place where our resident thinks or receives a message back saying, yes, your message has been received, give it a ticket number, let it give some signification that this is more than just a electronic message being stored somewhere that we might use at a later date? Not only that, the second thing I could see that Janet messed up on is that she didn't let the customer know what was going to happen. In other words, there wasn't even an acknowledgement. We'll talk about that acknowledgement again here shortly, now that I just have another thought. But Janet did not tell that customer what was going to happen, especially in today's modern world of quick convenience. The customer had no idea what the next steps were going to be. An email reply could have been, thank you very much for your message. I am forwarding this to whatever department that can actually solve this. They will get back with you by the end of today. And if possible, maybe even Janet could add, we can expect previous times of this particular issue to follow this pathway. Please reach out to me directly at whatever phone number or whatever communication method is being used in their particular office, and we will take care of it. Offer some reassurance with a deadline. In other words, the customer can know how long they should wait before having to go raise a flag, paint stuff fluorescent again. Now, that acknowledgement thing, I think, is another critical lesson out of this. Not only when dealing with residents, what about dealing with each other? I'm a huge proponent of having radios on an apartment community. I am not really a huge proponent of using a phone for your office communication device. Now, yes, they work, they can be wonderful. Although, if your community is using a group chat to communicate with your maintenance team, office team members to the other, the most irritating thing in the world for being inside of a residence apartment is to have all of the various messages on this device go off and ping and bing and sound and notifications. And if you put it on vibrate or, set your phone to stun, that can be irritating as well, especially because frequently those messages devolve into a back and forth of this is on a message from the office to maintenance. Office, is apartment 1203 ready? Maintenance, no. Office, when will it be ready? Maintenance, I don't know. Office, I need it ready by Thursday. Maintenance, long text message, it can't be ready by Thursday. We need parts. We need this to happen. The painter hasn't finished. The other is not done. Office, what's the next steps? Maintenance, I'll get back to you. Office, I need to know now. Maintenance, I'll be right there. How many messages in that one exchange? And each one of those, somebody has to sit there and thumb in the message and then hit send and then try and go back to what it was that they were doing. In a previous episode, we talked about interruptions in the context of being on call. But each and every one of those text messages, just between those two individuals, when they get finished thumbing in their answer and they put their phone down, they begin the mental process of getting back to whatever it was they were doing before the interruption occurred. Meanwhile, the person on the other end is receiving seemingly another interruption to what they were already doing. So the problem becomes then you have two people on your property that are operating in a constant state of interruption, which, if you remember the survey, it says their work still got done, but it was less accurate, it was more rushed, and to that point, it was less satisfying as a worker. But wait. If we're communicating on a group chat, that means that it's not only those two people that are involved, it's everybody else on the property who has a phone that's a part of the group chat. Every ding, ping, zip, buzz, whatever messaging method you have, even if I'm not a part of that chain, I have to take out my phone, be interrupted, open up, unlock my phone, and verify the message is not for me. That's frustrating, even unintentionally. I am not a fan of using text messages as a communication device from us to our office and for our office to us. If we need to have communications, pick up the phone. Even better, use a radio. Radios have benefits. It's old technology. I know I'm an old fuddy-duddy, but so what? They work. They are one button push, and it sits on your belt, or you can have the really cool radio microphone that goes up on your shirt collar and set. They even make radios, yes, for those of you who want the pods in your ear. By the way, I'm not a fan of this option. I think it's bad customer service to try and deal with other people when you have a thing in your ear. That other person, you're saying that what their message is or what they're talking to you about is worthy of being interrupted at any time by some unknown, unseen person that's inside your ear. But that's a different topic. A radio has the benefit that anyone with a radio in the office, maintenance, whoever communication would need to occur with is one button away. You keep the volume down, and as long as everybody understands that anybody can hear what's going on and being said, you be pleasant. It's just that. You communicate in clear language, and instantaneously that entire text message conversation, which could have taken 3 or 4 minutes by text message if both parties in the text message were on it and paying attention and waiting for the resulting communication, that same amount of information could actually be transferred more completely, possibly with less stress, in way less time. That entire communication could have been like 45 seconds. And both parties would have been able to communicate more completely because you get tone of voice, you may get joke, you may even get a smile. Plus, if the office is in front of a resident who wants to move in that situation or in that circumstance, and that resident needs to know when they can move in on Thursday in our story, the resident gets the benefit of seeing our office person affecting a solution right then and there by communicating directly with the person that can solve or do whatever needs to be done. Again, we get back to that fact that the customer, in our case, a resident, well, maybe prospective resident in this story, gets to know that their problem, their issue is being solved. So this concept of communication and feedback, we refer to that as a feedback loop. If we're communicating by radio or even by phone, heck, let's take it for all communication mediums, for any and all of us. If we see a message coming to us, if we are a part of a communication string, First of all, acknowledge the message. In radio world, we used to call that a Big 10-4. Growing up, where CBs were a major thing. Yes, 10-4, good buddy, was a normal thing to hear and say. It works on the radio. If you don't quite want to go, my CB colloquialism trucker speak, okay works. Gotcha. I hear you. Thumbs up. I even remember a property where our radio etiquette at our community was that if you didn't want to talk for whatever reason, you used clicks. In other words, you depressed the button on the side of the radio one time, that meant yes. 2 times meant no. Everybody knew it. We used it on a regular basis. It was great. If you're standing in front of a resident and a message comes for you over the radio, yes, and interrupts what it is you're doing, if you click twice, the person at the other end of the radio knows they don't have to yell again into the radio. They don't need to hunt you down or track you. They know you acknowledge their message, but no, meaning I can't talk to you right now. Be right back. If they had a message for you, instead of opening your mouth and saying 10-4, you click the button once and everybody knew message received, go on about our day. I don't know exactly why radios have fallen out of fashion other than their old technology. I visit too many communities and I talk with too many maintenance people around the country that the radio issue is a really big one. The communication challenges on our property are huge. So after this, we're going to change tack a little bit and talk about something different. Be right back.
Your team isn't just a group of people. It's an ecosystem. And like any ecosystem, it needs the right balance to thrive. Introducing Cultivating a Rainforest Team Culture, an immersive one-day leadership training inspired by Jason Kay's best-selling book, Journey to a Rainforest Team Culture. Learn how to build a team's culture that's resilient, innovative, and unstoppable. You'll leave with clear leadership frameworks, actionable strategies, and the tools to foster motivation, engagement, and problem solving. Join us and transform your office into a thriving rainforest where your team can grow like never before. Register now at www.jasonk.com. That's www.jasonkae.com.
Quick, what's your answer? A resident comes in and lets you know that water is coming out of their faucet, one little itty bitty spot of water at a time. How do you describe it to somebody? Is that a leak or a drip? That answer is an example of one of the challenges that we have when we're dealing with resident on-site communication. We don't have, for whatever reason, a shared frame of reference in a description. Now, I would call that a faucet dripping. If, however, the sink had a hole in the bottom of it so that water was dripping from underneath that sink into the cabinet below, that is no longer a drip, that's a leak. The difference in my mind is the fact that damage is being done. Now, both situations need to be addressed. However, the way that I, as a maintenance technician, am going to respond to both of those issues or both of those situations is different. In the case of the sink with a crack in the bottom of it to where the underside, the cabinets are getting wet and damaged, that, in my mind, requires a much faster, more thorough, and a bigger response just due to the potential liability of that 4-letter M word that we no longer use. Again, what do you call that? By the way, we're referring here to mold, that thing that according to our policies, we have gotten rid of completely because we're not even allowed to say that word. I understand why, and that's not an indictment for what we do, but it does boil down to differences in communication. People call that 4-letter substance different things. for good reason. Bio waste, stain, mildew, algae. Oh, what was the one that I heard here recently that sounded like a scientific convention word that only doctors use? I can't remember, but that's kind of the point. We all call it something different when in the end, we kind of know what it is. And based on what words we use, it's going to affect how we as maintenance respond to that issue. So what words are being used? And do we spend the time in order to know what we each mean? Oftentimes disagreements come from the fact that when I say red, I have a picture of what red is. In my mind, red is a fire truck, old style fire truck. However, depending on where you are in the country, you say it's the color of a fire truck. Fire trucks are not always red, not anymore. I've been seeing towns and places where they're green or fluorescent-ish yellow, even this pastel kind of pinkish color that it caught my eye and attention because you got this huge truck with ladders and hoses and firemen inside, and it's pink. It didn't register for me. What we're talking about here is differences in expectation perceptions. So I think there's two takeaways. The first is have that discussion. Bring up, in your messages, use my leak or drip analogy example. Have that conversation. Identify what it is going on so that at the very least, you have that understanding mutually. The second piece of advice is to talk about the differences in response and the differences in time. As a maintenance team, do yourself a favor. Whatever you come up with, get to understand what tools at your community would you respond to water coming out the front of a faucet, and what tools at your community would you use to respond to a broken sink basin that is leaking water to the cabinet below. Set up mutual understanding of expectations for all of those situations. The more as a team, as a group, we all understand what everyone else means, it will be a much more pleasant place. And since it's mutually understood expectations, we all have an idea of what it is that we're doing or we're dealing with, and even what we're responding to. So, here's the question. Is it a drip or a leak? Thank you for joining me today on the Maintenance Mindset. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week. And if you're listening to this during the holidays, have a fantastic holiday time. Do everything you can to prevent interruptions from your holiday time with your family, your loved ones, your friends, your community, the people you work with. Stay away from those interruptions because we all need to be a team to each other with mutual expectations for what we're going to do and for how we're going to both end the year and start off next year. Thank you for joining me again. I hope you have a fantastic week. I'll see you somewhere.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Maintenance Mindset. I hope you take away ideas that apply to your current and future career goals. Please check out Maintenance Mindset Minute to hear short-form, high-impact, applicable, maintenance-centered information. Whatever you do today, do it with a maintenance mindset. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, and subscribe. Visit multifamilymedianetwork.com to learn more about our other industry podcasts, thought pieces, and sponsorship opportunities. I'll see you somewhere.